Welcome back to the Backtrader series. This is your host Ali, and in today's video we're going to introduce the heart of Backtrader, the strategy or the trading logic. Now before I start, if you like my content, I would like to ask you to subscribe to my channel. Let's get started. Think of the strategy lifecycle as a loop over the data. At each column or candle, or each column, each new bar basically, or a candle, we check for a certain condition. And it could be the SMA crossover, for example. And if this condition was true, we execute the order and we notify the trader. Then the new bar comes in. And if the condition is met, the same thing happens. If it wasn't, or the condition was false, for example, then the trader does not do anything and waits for the new bar. The same concept is used by Backtrader. So basically, let's think about the conceptual strategy loop of in a Backtrader or any backtesting engine. First of all, we need to request the data, or for example, the indicators, and set the parameters and the initial parameters. When the data buffer is enough to proceed, we loop over the bars and check for the conditions. If those conditions are met, we submit the orders and we notify the trader. If not, we go back and check the next bar. Well, according to Backtrader strategy loop, we need to populate three things, or three main things are needed. First of all, the init, next, and basically we can use the log, but we can basically are the two main parameters needed, or two main functions needed are the init and the next. Well, the init populates the indicator and any initial parameters. Start kicks on the heart. It could be void or it can be empty basically, or we can simply do not mention it. We can simply not mention it. Next, loops over the bars and checks the strategy logic to do some actions. Let's go to do some actions. The stop is when the bars are finished. Now what we do? We can either close all positions or simply keep it empty. Well, as for the internal referencing, loaded data into the Backtrader. As for the internal referencing in Backtrader, whenever we need to the close of a certain stock or any data, we should follow the Pythonic indexing standards. Every loaded data into Backtrader will be referenced using datas of index I. And the column is simply datas of index I.column, for example. And the close, basically, for example, the close in this notation would be datas of index I, close of certain of this, if we're looking for the current data point, where we're gonna mention that we're gonna type datas of column I of index I, column of index 0, or the current data point. Time to code. First, we're gonna start with importing Backtrader, of course. Backtrader as BT. We're gonna import pandas as well as PD. Pandas as PD. What else do? Right, let's import Yahoo Finance. Y Finance as YF. No, we're gonna use the Tesla stock, which is equal to YF.download. TSLA, we're gonna use the daily bars for simplicity. Tesla stock, and here we go, we got the Tesla. Let's check if it's there. Alright, we have everything in place. Info, perfect. I think it's already similar to the format that Backtrader needs. Now let's parse the data as we learned in the previous lecture. Let's call it data, which is equal to bt.feeds.pandas data, as we learned, because this is a pandas data frame. Data name equal to TSLA. I think this one will work directly because the index is already indexed and the names are similar to the saved format. Now let's build the strategy. Now let's call it test STG, that inherits Backtrader strategy class. As we mentioned earlier, we need to start with the initializer self. Let's keep it empty for the first test. Define next. It also takes self and pass. keep it empty for the in the meantime. Now let's initialize Cerebro. Instantiate Cerebro, which is equal to bt.cerebro. Let's add the data, Cerebro.add data. And the data's name, the parse data is called data. Now let's add the strategy, add strategy. And our strategy is called test STG. To run the strategy on this data, we should mention cerebro.run. And here we go. Our strategy has run, but since we don't have any conditions or any logs or anything, it won't print anything. Let's try to print the current market close and learn more on the test close. That also inherits bt.strategy. Well, during the initialization, we can put any data that we need, or any type of data that we're gonna need later on, or let's say the indicators, for example, but let's keep it for later on. Well, for this time, I'm gonna need, for this example, I'm gonna print the close when I run the strategy. To print it, we need, first of all, to get the close. Let's say data close equal to, as we learned earlier in the internal referencing, in the internal referencing slide, data's 0, because we in the 0, which is the index of the first data that we added, data's dot close of the current close, which is 0, and print data close. Now let's see what will happen when we add the test close strategy. And here you go. We got the closing price of Tesla stock per day. Now, what if we took this data close into the initializer, so we can basically, like, to make our lives easier, to be honest. Class test, let's call it close I, or close I. It also inherits pt.strategy def init. Oops, sorry. Self. I'm gonna say that self.dataclose, I'm gonna assign a new variable called dataclose that can be used in the entire class, so I need to use the self. Self.dataclose is equal to self.datas, the first type of data, dot close. We're gonna reference the current price later on. Okay, def next, define the next function, self. This one is gonna, let's say, print self.dataclose at the current, or print the current data close. Let's add the test close I, and I think it's close I, yeah. Here we go. We got the same result. Now, what if it's better to use the logging function, because at a later stage we need to notify the trader about our trades, or we want to print our trades basically. So it's better to use the logging function. So we're going to create a log function that is class another strategy, or another sample strategy, test log, which also inherits bt.strategy def init initializer, also takes self. Again, we're gonna create this data close variable, which is equal to self.datas dot close. Now define, def log that takes the self and any kind of text, some text. This one needs to have the time. needs actually to take the time and mention it. dt, let's call the variable called dt, which is equal to self.datas dot datetime, in order to invoke the datetime function object, and datetime, and we need to get the date and time. Sorry, I think I had a spelling mistake. Dot datetime. dt will actually get the current datetime of each candle, or the current candle. And text we can keep, sorry, we need to print the log. Print, it's an f string, we're gonna use it as dt, and let's put it in this way, and the text goes in here. Def next, sorry, it also takes the self. At this point we're gonna log, or let's name it as x, equal to self.dataclose. At the current, give me the current data close for each at each iteration. And now let's self.log in order to invoke the function, and our text will be, and now in this case, equal to x. So we're gonna input the text into the log function, which is the data close, and it will show us the time as well as the data close per each bar. Let's add this strategy, the log, sorry, forgot to invoke Cerebro. Here we go, and voila, we got the datetime object as well as the price.